Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim. Join hosts Dan Melnick and Qasim Masood as they explore big ideas, limitless possibilities, and engage with visionaries, entrepreneurs, and thought leaders who dare to dream big, get inspired, motivated, and find practical tips for personal growth. Think big, dream bigger, and ignite your potential.
Welcome to Think Big with Dan and Qasim, and our guest today is Cesar. So Cesar, if you want to go ahead and introduce yourself, tell us where you live and what you do.
Hey Dan, how you doing? Thanks for having me, buddy. I live in Dallas, Texas, and basically what I do, I help founders build products in the VMS space. VMS stands for vitamins, minerals, and supplements. So I help them getting from ideation to bring the product to market. Normally that 0 to 1 step.
Awesome. So I'm just curious about your background. How did you kind of get into this space in the first place?
Well, I have an interesting journey. I started selling bags, literally selling tortilla and bread bags, which brought me to Texas Poly. It was a family company in Dallas that manufactured packaging. And I started in sales there, and we started growing the company. And we developed into one of the main suppliers for supplements in Texas. We supplied printed films and pouches to mostly manufacturers in the supplement space. A great adventure, very fun, painful at some points, but that's what brought me to the supplement space.
Makes sense. So I guess even getting into the space in the first place, if you can talk about your journey in terms of what you studied, how did you even get that job? What did that process kind of look like for you?
Yes, not very conventional as well. I studied economics in Mexico and had a baby and needed a job. And basically that job in Mexico was selling into the US. We were selling packaging into the US. And obviously I realized that there was a much bigger opportunity being here. And that brought me to Texas. I started brokering packaging, bags and films. And then I realized that manufacturing was actually better than brokering and much more interesting. And that's when I joined Texas Poly some 8 years ago.
So when it comes to packaging, I'm curious because I think that, there's obviously many founders watching this. What are some the misconceptions that people have if they want to launch their supplement brand? What is some of the challenges or their misconceptions in terms of getting the right packaging?
I think one of the main ones is that creating packaging is easy. It looks easy, but like with any other manufacturing process, it has a lot of nuance. And I noticed that many founders tend to avoid learning because they have many other things to worry about, right? So packaging become an afterthought. And very often packaging becomes the biggest nightmare in the process, right? Because some oversight in terms of the size of the packaging, in terms of some little compliance wording that you should have had, the position of some element in the design. So basically the oversight. I think founders should know how it's made, how it goes into their machines, how it works within the manufacturing process. They should know the materials very well. They should know their manufacturers, the origin. They should become kind of experts in packaging, especially if you're in the CPGs, consumer packaged goods, right? That the packaging is right there. So I think that's one of the pitfalls that I've seen. It's not learning enough.
I guess how do you kind of figure out what makes sense, right? Because obviously there's many different channels, right? You can be selling direct to consumer from your website. You can be selling on Amazon. You can be in physical retail. You can be in big box retail, right? Food service, etc. Right? So there's, I guess, different types of packaging for different channels. So do you kind of believe in that method, or is it finding one packaging, having it dialed in across all your channels?
Yes, ideally you want to have something that works for every channel. The main thing is functionality. It's very simple. The last thing you want for your packaging is that it breaks or it spoils the product, right? That's the main thing. And funny enough, that's one of the oversights. Sometimes founders are super focused on design and optics, and don't pay attention to the functionality. So it's very simple. You don't want it to break. That's number one. That should be 80% of the equation. And then you have to decide if you're going to be on a shelf, you want certain properties from the materials, stuff like, hey, you don't want it to shine too much, right? Because you want people to be able to see it. And obviously you want to capture the attention of the consumers as quick as possible without getting lost in the sea of products in the shelf. Then if you're direct to consumer, then functionality becomes even more important because you're shipping products, right? And we all seen how they treat the delivery guys, how they treat sometimes your packages. So you want that packaging to be very, very sturdy as possible as you can afford.
And I guess like it's like if you're sourcing high quality material, right? Because there's obviously many options and it seems like a lot of material comes from different countries. So how do you kind of find like the right partner to like source your packaging material for you?
It depends. There's always a trade-off between cost, or often a trade-off between cost and reliability, right? Asia, it's going to be, we can compete with them. It's so cheap. But then you have dependability, right? Are those companies be able to respond quickly if you need packaging quickly? Or are they going to respond if there is a quality issue? So normally you want to go there, you want to visit the factory. A clean, quiet factory is normally a good factory. That's what you want to see. If you see too much mess, people running around, people yelling, that's normally not a good factory. And the same goes for local suppliers, right? I would recommend just go there, meet with the team, look at the equipment. It better be clean and organized and people in a good mood. Grumpy people in manufacturing are always a liability. So go there to talk to the team, see how they think about their products, and then do the technical stuff, right? You can always do an audit and survey their quality processes. But it's mostly, I think operations is very personal, and people always often rely on forms and actually going through process, but it's about people. I recommend go there, meet the people, make sure that they care about what they do, and then look at samples, right? And have all your compliance and quality processes in place.
But I guess like at what point does it make sense to actually like stay here domestically for packaging versus like going overseas? I mean, obviously cost like is one factor, but I guess like besides that, like do you have certain recommendations depending on what kind of products, depending on channels? Like what do you kind of look at just from that perspective?
I think it depends on the stage that you are in business. For example, some founders that are bootstrapping a business, right? They need it cheap. They need it cheap, so they go overseas, and that's the best play for them. But when you see, at least in my space, in supplements, when you see the biggest players, they normally source in the US because they realize that the trade-off is not worth the risk. Or they have multiple suppliers, right? This is a big operation. They might have a supplier in Asia that provides 70% of their packaging, and that they have someone local that they can rely on in case things doesn't work. But it's by stage. It depends on the needs of the business at that moment. With that said, there are suppliers in Asia that are very good, super reliable. They're really as good as any local supplier. And the opposite goes around. There are local suppliers that you shouldn't talk to them, right? We should actually deport them and get them out of the country because they're so bad, right? So again, it depends on the stage and the needs on the business at that moment. But the more you know about them and the more you know about your business, the more equipped you are to make those decisions.
For sure. And I guess for somebody who's just starting out, obviously there is expenses with ordering packaging. So what do you typically see as like an MOQ, or like how much, I guess like on average, just should somebody budget to actually like go and, spend money on packaging?
It depends on what kind of packaging. My specialty was flexible packaging, which is films and pouches. So it depends on the technology. Normally for lower quantities, you want to print digital. That normally you can start with $1,500 worth of packaging if you print digital. And then you graduate to flexographic printing, which was our specialty. And that's when you start hitting 50,000 units, 100,000 units. That's when Flexo makes economic sense. With that said, I always recommend brands spend the least amount possible on packaging because more than likely you're going to have to change stuff. So be picky, be cheap, print only what you need for that specific run, and then figure out the next one. Try not to keep any in inventory. Try not to hedge for the next order. Just focus on that order, because 90% of the time there's something you have to change. And that could be that you're changing artwork, compliance, size, or you're changing suppliers, which is super common, especially when you start out. So always bring the minimum amount possible. And once you feel comfortable and you start getting big orders, which is what we all want, then you graduate to Flexo and your costs are going to drop dramatically.
For sure. And I guess like in terms of like your packaging, how do you kind of like incorporate your designs? Obviously you have to work with like a packaging designer, but how do you like just like make sure that like that person is the right fit for like your type of packaging?
Yeah, I think there are two main things to look at. Once it's the functionality of packaging in terms of how they're gonna work for your manufacturer. And I'm assuming here that most brands use co-packers, right? That's my assumption. So like I said, the most important thing is that you can actually put the product in the packaging and that it doesn't break. So in order to do that, you have to work with both your packaging manufacturer and your co-packer. There is certain complexity, especially when you're form, fill, and sealing, which is when you put it on a machine from a roll and it folds and seals and you put a powder in there. That's the most common application. So that's very tricky because every manufacturer has a different machine with different layouts, and that can become tricky. So you better get your designer, your packaging manufacturer, and your co-packer on a call. Make sure that you check everything. You check size, positioning, unwind, the technical stuff. I could give you so many examples of like small oversights that become a pain in the neck. Actually, I'm dealing with one now. Right after we're done here, I'm running to a manufacturer because there was a mess up on sizing. So we're going there to figure it out. So that's one, the functionality, right? Now, for packaging design, that's super subjective. I try not to get into that. I leave that to the marketing people. Just make it effective, right? Make it effective. You want a goal. The goal is to sell product. So make sure that you don't do anything that is not conducive to sell the product. And you can see very, very complex and very elaborated packaging out there that sits in the shelf. And then you have like a 3-color packaging, maybe someone selling bars, right? And they sell the heck out of that. So I say design for effectiveness, sadly, as opposed to design for beauty, because beauty is not necessarily.
For sure. And obviously compliance and regulation is super important. What are some of like the most common mistakes that you see founders make from that perspective?
The main mistake I see is trying to wing it and ChatGPT it. We know it's a great tool. You and me love it. Everyone loves it. I would recommend get a specialist. There are several companies out there that they specialize in compliance. It's normally very cheap in the big scheme of things, right? Compared to the liabilities, investing in a compliance advisor is very cheap. Go and do it. Mostly the mistakes I've seen is like allergen statements that they miss one, or very simple stuff. It's normally in the ingredients panel. They have a small oversight, or they make claims, and this is like the super dangerous part of it, right? They make a claim that is not supported. So, but that's a little bit beyond the scope of packaging. That's packaging people try to stay away from touching that. It's like basically, hey, you tell me what you want me to print and make, and I'll do that, right? That's why you need a specialist. Hire someone that is proven out there, that has a good track record, and pay for compliance advice.
For sure. And I guess like many supplements now are entering this like gummy space, right? Gummies are super huge. So how do you kind of like work with those founders to make sure that their gummies are not melting in transit, for example?
Yes. There are two main ways. You can have your manufacturer develop the product. This is often the cheapest way to do it in terms of initial investment. Most manufacturers have their own labs. They have their own R&D team, and they're good to work with, and they know the equipment. That's one way to do it. That creates certain conflict of interest when it comes to the ownership of the formula. So that has to be properly designed. And there's a lot of drama around that, a lot. So what I recommend is working with your own formulator. You hire, the same with compliance. Hey, hire a guy. He's going to cost you, I don't know, maybe $35 to $5,000. Hire the guy, and they will work with the manufacturer's R&D team in making sure that your product works. And that's an insurance policy for you. Just hire that person. I have plenty of those that are pretty good. I spend time with them. They're going to be a check and balance with your manufacturer's claims, right? That's your advisor as well. And that's where I've seen a lot of success when the brand owner has their own R&D team and they know their product very well. That's normally the safest. It's a little bit more expensive to start, right? You're adding $5,000, could get up to 20, but in the long run is the best way to do it for peace of mind, for IP purposes, and obviously to reduce potential future drama, which we don't like drama.
For sure. And I guess like when those formulators are making the product, obviously there's many legalities, and this is kind of like a bit outside of like what you do, but I'm sure that you're kind of like I'm looking at this as well. Is you obviously have certain patents, certain products are making the market. So do you ever look at that aspect of it and say, hey, listen, like this product is already out there, like it's patented, that we can't make this product? Like, how do you kind of like make sure that is all dialed in?
There are basically, when you build this product, you have a requirement, and that's basically the dream of the founder, right? The dream of the founder is to make every goal God in America healthy. That's the dream. And then you have to land it. And you have to land it, and you have to make it real based on, first, the resources of the founder, right? It's very hard to make America America's got healthy again with $5,000, right? So that's number one. You have a requirement, then I recommend you use this specialist. And you basically create a big checklist when you go through every item that has to be validated. And you validate that before, during, and after you manufacture the product, right? There are check and balances. There are quality controls and samples approvals before manufacturing. Then you have controls during manufacturing, and then you have testing after manufacture. And testing has to be done. There are some optionals there, but I have a full page of testings that are the gold standard. It's like 20 of them, and most founders want to do 10. The gist is the other 10. Those are the ones that get you in trouble. Those are the ones that there are people just picking samples from the shelf, trying to see who missed the mark on those. Just do your testing. Like, have a very clear understanding of your requirements, have a very clear product development process, and then do your testing, and you should be fine.
100%. So obviously now we're at the halfway point here in 2025. So what are you most focused on for the rest of this year?
My main focus right now is to find great founders. That's the key for my business. I'm only as good as the founders I work with, right? By great founders, ideally, I mean founders that are very, very motivated and focused, which is a challenge for founders because founders are normally creative, so they have their minds everywhere. But the ones I've seen succeed are the ones that are obsessed about one idea, obsessed to the point of being annoying. And I love that annoyance. I love the founders that text me at 2 a.m. Hey, man, I'm working on this. What do you think? Right? So founders that are very driven, very focused, and founders that have the resources and experience. That's the other component. This is like any other business. To be good is very hard. Right? This is not the hardest business. We're not building rocket ships here, but it's very competitive and there's a lot of money in it. So founders better have an idea of their investment requirements. That's something that I do in my first conversation with them is, hey, do you have the money now to fund up to launch? Right? That's the bare minimum. And then, do you have the experience? Have you done this before? Have you ever developed a product? Have you ever had your own company? Have you been successful before? And what can you bring from that experience to this venture, right? So that's basically two components: highly driven and focused founders that have the resources to make it happen.
Awesome. So if you could go back in time to before you started this business, what is the one biggest piece of advice that you wish you knew?
I think the main one is conveying to the founders the requirements of the job, of the product. So many founders jump into it. They're pretty good, let's say, at content, right? They're pretty good at meta ads, and they think that because they're good at meta ads, they'll be able to make it work. But they miss the mark on product, like creating a product that people like. It doesn't matter how good your ads are if your product sucks. Right? If your product doesn't taste well or doesn't do what it promised to do, sooner rather than later, it's going to fall apart. Right? That's number one. And number two is operations. Even if you're using a co-packer and you're using a 3PL, you need to know how to operate a business. You need to know how to operate fulfillment and pay your bills and source ingredients. You need to know the nuts and bolts of the business. Even if you're sitting somewhere with a computer creating ads, you need to know how to operate and run a business. And in the beginning, I assumed founders would be very clear about it. I took it as a given, and it turned out that it wasn't. Like, some founders thought that they could just, hey, wing it, put some ads in there, have people build product and create product for them, and they wouldn't have to get their hands dirty. Nope, it's not like that. They have to get their hands dirty. They're going to have to work a lot. They're going to have to come to the shop and sample and test horrible product that goes bad and do all the nitty gritty stuff that any other founder in any other business has to do. The stuff that doesn't scale, right?
That's good advice, 100% true. So if somebody's watching this show and they wanted to work with you or they wanted to reach out to you, do you mind sharing your website or social media, I guess, best ways to get in contact?
Yes, I'm on LinkedIn, Cesar Bustamante, and my website is vmscreators.com. I'm a simple man. That's all I have. My
Awesome.
email is Cesar@vmscreators.com.
All right, thanks so much for your time today.
You got it, buddy. Take care. Bye-bye.